Hey there, health lovers. Welcome to The Scoop, where we serve you straight nutrition talk, one scoop at a time. I'm Rachel. I'm a dietitian. I'm a wife. I'm a mom of 2 busy boys, and I am a big fan of making small, healthy changes that can lead to big results. So grab your coffee, your water bottle, or even your afternoon snack and settle in. We're about to dive into today's scoop. And trust me, these simple tips are going to make healthy living feel a whole lot easier. Let's get started. Any and all opinions and views shared by hosts and guests on this podcast are the speaker's own and do not represent the views of Live It Up or its affiliates or parent company. Hey guys, welcome back to The Scoop, serving straight nutrition talk, one scoop at a time. Today we're going to talk about breaking the sugar habit and how to reduce your sugar intake with micro habits. Did you know that the average person can consume more than their recommended daily sugar intake from just having one 12-ounce can of soda? It's actually a fact that you probably know but want to push way down because soda can be delicious. All right, so today is a hot topic. Sugar, everyone talks about it. It strikes a nerve with a lot of people, right? We know that too much sugar is not great for our health. It can be so hard to reduce it in our diet. Not only can sugar feel as though it's addictive for some people, but it's also in a ton of foods that we buy. There's a lot of sneaky sugar being added to our diet that we might not be taking into account. Now, we don't have to cut out sugar completely from our diets. But as Americans, we do take in way too much. The recommendation is actually to stay below 9 teaspoons for men, which is about 36 grams, and 6 teaspoons for women, which is about 25 grams. This, of course, changes depending on your calorie intake, but these are the general guidelines. Now, on average, American adolescents and adults take in about 17 teaspoons of sugar, which is 68 grams of sugar. 68 grams is 272 calories, and that is adding 1 pound to your body every 12 days. And if you think about over a year, that's 30 pounds. That's a lot of sugar. So what makes this volume of sugar so unhealthy? Why do we have to think about reducing it? So sugar is a high glycemic food. This means that when we eat it, our blood sugar increases really quickly. The rise in blood sugar causes the body to release insulin. So insulin is like a gatekeeper to our cells. It helps sugar get into the cells to be used as energy. Now, research indicates that frequent, fast rises in our blood sugar and the ensuing release of insulin, so releasing insulin constantly throughout the day, can over time lead to an increased risk of different chronic diseases. What can we do about this? Let's talk about some micro habits that you can put into place to help slowly reduce your intake. So the first thing you can do is figure out about how much you're taking in. You might want to consider using a food log for this part, and don't cheat yourself, be honest. Only when you're truthful with yourself can you make real and long-term change happen. So I recommend taking a log, keeping a log for about a week, because your weekday log might be really different than your weekend log, right? Your weekends are very different in terms of what your schedule is, if you're eating out more, maybe you're skipping more meals. So not only does the process of keeping a log tell you about how much of different macro and micronutrients you're taking, it might also show you what time of day is the most difficult. What triggers your cravings? Is it stress? Is it boredom? Is it a difficult work situation? Did you have a difficult call with, someone? Is it being at home alone? What time of day do your cravings pop up? Is it the afternoon slump? Is it the quiet time after dinner? I know that personally, when I work with clients, these are some of the 2 most common times that people might have cravings. Some people crave something sweet right after a meal because they've actually trained their brain taking in something sweet after that meal. Take some notes about your triggers and your crave foods. What is the biggest area that you can make a difference with one micro change? Could you swap a sugary beverage for water? Could you swap some nutrient-packed, fiber-rich fruit at night instead of having some of those sweets? Could you bring a healthy, balanced snack for that afternoon slump? Maybe pump up your protein and your fiber at meals to help you feel more satisfied so that you're less likely to end up craving something sweet later. I want you to choose one thing, just one thing to make an impact in your day. Write it down. What is your goal? Write down the steps so that you set yourself up for success. Now, I want to take a little step back and talk about cravings for a moment, because it really helps to understand what's happening on a chemical level in your body. Our response to stress is partially regulated by the hypothalamic pituitary axis, or the HPA. I've talked about this before in terms of our gut-brain axis too. When we eat sugar, it actually reduces activity in the HPA. So that means it's reducing our response to stress. Eating sugary foods releases dopamine. Dopamine is our natural opioid, and it also decreases stress. Dopamine also makes us feel real good. So we love it when we get that dopamine hit in our brain, right? That natural hit. So these two things combined strengthen the desire to eat more of these comfort foods, and it perpetuates the emotional eating cycle. It's kind of like your brain is working against you, and that's why cutting out sugar is so difficult for some people. Once our brain gets used to a certain amount of dopamine, right? You eat a certain amount of food, it releases a certain amount of dopamine. And so you are getting that high from that food, but then you get used to it. It needs more. So we're driven to eat more and more of that food to feel good. So now we're training the brain to need even more of it for the same, pleasure centers to kind of light up in our brain. So when we have a craving, we're often fighting against a chemical response in our brain. And this is why some people have a tougher time reducing sugar than others, because their chemical response is so high. So think about your process of starting to wean off of sugar as retraining the brain. You are retraining the brain to need less dopamine to feel good. It takes time, and that's why going slow may be really helpful. I have a good strategy for when you're feeling a craving. So cravings for some people can be an overwhelming sensation. It's kind of like you're surfing, right? And the swell of the wave, the craving gets bigger and bigger, and you're at the top of it and you're riding high and you're eating the food and it feels really good, and then it crashes and you're caught under the water and you feel like you're struggling and you can't get out, and then all of a sudden you come up to the surface and you feel damaged, right? You feel like you got swept away. You feel defeated. This is a craving. And for some people, it feels like you have blinders on, like you can't think about anything else. You're just thinking about that food. You can't do anything except for that food. So I want you to put a pause between thought and action. I want you to start to recognize the symptoms of when your craving starts to come on. And when you recognize that, I want you to make the decision to remove yourself. I want you to go sit in a quiet room without any food distractions, really without any distractions if possible. And I want you to commit to 2 minutes, right? Sit down, take 3 to 5 deep centering breaths. And now I want you to put your hand on your stomach. And this is critical because this is actually bringing a physical sensation to what you're feeling right now, right? Your craving is mental. It's in your brain. It's chemicals, but I want you to physically put your hand on your stomach, and I want you to ask yourself, am I physically hungry? When was the last time I had a decent meal or snack? Did I have a balanced meal recently? If you didn't, this craving is probably just your body saying you are hungry. If you did just eat recently, it's likely that you are emotionally hungry. Usually with emotional hunger, you're only thinking about one food and no other food will do. Generally with physical hunger, any kind of food will help you move past that craving, right? Like you say to yourself, I'm going to go eat an apple, and that works. But when you're in a craving that is emotional, or a mental craving, like you don't physically need food, you emotionally need it, you are thinking probably just about one specific food. And I bet you're sitting there watching saying, yeah, I know exactly what food would be calling my name. And you might have a list. You might have a list of different foods. Some people are salty people. Some people are sweet people. So anyway, you have decided, is this physical hunger or is this mental hunger? So I want you to make your plan. This is all within the 2-minute, I like to call it a 2-minute food timeout, but that sounds kind of negative. So I want you to think about it as like a 2-minute reset. So make your plan. If you are physically hungry, what balanced snack are you going to go have to help get through? If this is a craving, then I want you to get distance between you and the food. Okay? So that'll make it physically more difficult for you to have it. If you have time, you could take a brisk walk. Physical activity is so great during these situations because it often resets your thinking. I have some clients who are like, I did 10 jumping jacks. It helped a little bit. It didn't help, but you have to figure out what works for you. Often, if you can take a quick walk outside, you could read a chapter of your favorite book. I want you to know that the strongest part of the craving, the strongest, time frame is 20 minutes, about 20 minutes. It's different for everyone, but that's about the average. So if you can make it through at least one that is that long, if you can wait at least 20 minutes, it's probably going to get easier to make it through the rest. So I know we don't always have the time in our day to make decisions like this and to create this kind of distance, but I at least want you to spend those 2 minutes putting a pause between your thought and your action. Sometimes it'll work and sometimes it will not because those chemicals are really strong, but you have to set it in motion. All right? Give yourself the space to make that decision. I will say it time and time again. We are not perfect. It's okay to not achieve perfection. But what's not okay is if you just give up and say, I can't do it, because you can. It'll take time and it'll take practice. But with those two things and your drive to overcome it, it's going to get easier and easier as you go. The more often you're able to make it through those 20 minutes, the more often you're able to not give in to those chemical reactions in your brain, the more you're retraining the brain to not need that food linked with that emotion. You need to break that link, right? So what micro changes can you do to help reduce your sugar intake and maybe help reduce these sugar cravings? Eating half of a serving instead of a full one. This is a great place to start. It's going to help you feel successful. And when you feel successful, it's easier to take that next step and add that next micro habit. Be your own nutrition sleuth. Read the nutrition facts panels. See what you're buying. You might think, Rachel, but why? Why should I look? Because what's the difference between 8 grams and 5 grams? The difference is if you're making the change across all the categories in all the different foods you're choosing, that adds up. They're micro changes. They all build into a bigger pattern, right? Having a little something sweet is not the end of the world. And sometimes it's absolutely wonderful to be able to have a little bit of chocolate at night or, after lunch or something as a delicious treat, as part of a balanced and tasty eating pattern. I am not someone who's going to tell you that you have to take it out completely because that is unsustainable for some people. This is the ultimate goal, to enjoy foods without feeling like they're controlling you. But there are some people out there who feel that they just can't have any because they will lose control when it comes to sugar. And that even just a little causes a binge. So people with a more addictive personality, a more impulsive personality, these are people that actually studies have shown might be more likely to have difficulty controlling their intake of certain foods like sugar. So it's really important if you are having a difficulty, with this area of your life, it's really important to talk to a professional, discuss your options, get in touch with a personal registered dietitian to figure out what is the best path for you. How can you handle it? Are you able to eat it in moderation? Or do we need to work on a way to take it out but still have a satisfying and delicious diet? What is going to make the biggest impact for you? It's time to dig in. I want you to figure out your first step. What micro habit can you start this week? Maybe it's having sweets one less night per week. Maybe it's replacing one of your sugary beverages for water every day. Everyone's journey is different. But the most important thing is that you take these small steps towards your optimal health. So tell me, what micro habit will you be starting this week? Let me know in our judgment-free zone.